Hello, and welcome to the answers to my regulations quiz. If you have no idea what this video is about, then check out the link in the description, because I made a quiz on the WCA regulations a few weeks ago on the Cubing World channel for one of my videos there, and I promised I would post the answers on my own channel, and I didn't really get around to that, and then I forgot, but yeah, here it is eventually, so I'm really sorry for the delay. But here are the answers. Right, so the first question was this square one. Is it solve plus 2 or DNF? The answer here is that it's solved. The regulation 10F4, that for square one, the slice move can be up to 90 degrees out before it's a plus 2, and this is just less than 90, so the answer is solved. Number 2, the Pyraminx has the tip not properly attached. And the relevant regulation here is 5b5, in which it says that if at the end of the attempt some parts of the puzzle are physically detached or not fully placed, etc., etc., and because it has more than one colour on the piece, it's a DNF. Some of you are wondering whether it is detached or not, but I think it's unambiguous because it's just not fully placed. Therefore, the DNF does apply here. Question 3 is a trick question, so well done if you noticed it. An event cannot have 3 rounds unless there are 16 or more competitors in the first round. So the answer is actually that there can't be a third round. So any of you that put words to that effect would have got that one right. Number 4, there is no minimum. There is a guideline, which I think it says 12, but that's not a regulation. Competitions don't have to have any competitors. Some people were saying I think one person said 2 because you've got the delegate and then the delegate can't scramble for himself. But I would say that's not really, because firstly the delegate doesn't have to compete, and secondly, the scrambler doesn't have to compete either. So I think I gave the right answer if you said 0 or 1, because like a competition without one person doesn't really make sense. Question 5. Noah's Pyraminx has black instead of yellow, white instead of green. How should it be scrambled? The regulation says that Pyraminx is scrambled with the yellow face, and if not possible, then the lightest face on bottom. So we have no yellow, so we put the lightest face on bottom. And the lightest face we have is clearly white, so white goes on the bottom. And then the green face, and if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on the front. Well, we have no green, but we definitely have a darkest adjacent face, and that's the black face. So we have white on bottom and black in front. Number 6, Noah is solving, the timer stops at 0.058. Regulation A6B1 says that if the timer stops before the end of the solve and the timer shows a time strictly below 0.06, then the attempt is replaced by an extra attempt. So this is clearly below 0.06, so it's an extra attempt. Question 7. Noah's done a solve 10:00:51. What should this time be recorded as? The regulation says that all timed results, averages and means over 10 minutes are measured and rounded to the nearest second. They're not rounded down necessarily, but they're rounded to the nearest second. So this one actually rounds up to 10:01. Some of you were saying that the default time limit is actually 10 minutes, so he should have a DNF. But then in 5 blind, you would expect them to probably change that and change the hard cutoff. So I think I just gave you a half mark if you're going to say something like that. Question 8. Noah's done 21 cubes in 59:57. He's got 17 solved, 2 plus 2s, and 2 not solved. Well, 19 of the cubes are sort of solved as such, just 2 with the plus 2, so he gets 19 out of 21, but he gets the 2 plus 2s, and that goes to 60 minutes and 1 second. Now I know the time limit is an hour, but there is a clarification on this in the guidelines, which says that if there's an example in which somebody stops with this exact time, 59:57, and has 2 time penalties, and it clarifies that the time given should be 60:01. So if you have time penalties, you can actually get a result of over an hour. So the result is 19 out of 21 in 60 minutes and 1 second. We have a few smooth solution for question 9. Now, given the right answer is 36 moves, which is just all the moves take away the rotations. Some of you have said that there's invalid notation, but I don't believe there is any here. A lot of you were questioning the little r in the square bracket, but this is actually a special notation that can be used, and all it means is that it's a rotation. It's not an r move, it's a rotation in the r direction. So r in square brackets like that is actually equivalent to x, and that is allowed. The other thing is things like writing d2, d2 next to each other, they don't cancel out, although they do cancel out. For your result, they won't cancel out, and all those moves will count. So 36 moves was the correct answer. Now number 10, I made this complicated on purpose, but it's come back to bite me because there's a couple of things I slightly overlooked. So most of you got half a mark for this. Pretty much everyone got half a mark, except for a few people which I thought their answer was definitely correct. So I'll go through it. So you have the 16 seconds of inspection, which pretty much everybody would have thought is +2, which is correct. When you set the cube down on the timer, now I'm not sure whether you noticed, but you set the cube down on the timer, so that's also a +2. There is a clear regulation about that. His right hand is touching the cube when he puts his hands on the pads, so that's +2 as well, because he's touching the puzzle while he's got his hands on the timer. Right, now he solves with his left hand, and some people made the good point that because it's one-handed and his right hand is touching the cube when he puts his hands on the pads, it should be a DNF, because clearly the solve starts, he's touching with his right hand, but then he solves with his left hand. He's used both hands. But I still think this is ambiguous, because the way I wrote it was that only when he puts his hands on the pads, his right hand is touching the cube. I didn't say that when he takes his hands off, his right hand is still touching it, and therefore during the solve he hasn't necessarily touched it with both hands. But it's a good point you made. Then we have the next point when he stops the timer cross-handed. There's nothing wrong with that, that's absolutely fine. Then the puzzle is falling off the table, so he catches it with his right hand. Again, this is outside of the solve time because he's stopped the timer, so that doesn't go against the one-handed regulation of touching it with both hands. But what it does do is that you've touched the puzzle after you've stopped the timer. So there's a regulation A6E, competitor must not touch or move the puzzle until the judge has inspected the puzzle. Penalty is disqualification of the attempt, but at the discretion of the judge he may give a +2 if no moves have been applied. Now I didn't clarify whether that might be applicable here, so for everybody who said DNF basically for this, I've given half a mark. If you explained yourself properly, then I gave you a mark for it. Or if, as I intended, I think there was only one person who gave the answer that I actually intended. I'll say that in a sec after we go over the last point. The timer shows 20.058 seconds, so that gets truncated. The third digit gets truncated, so it's 20.05. Now what I intended was that it wasn't a DNF, that he just gets the +2 for catching it with his right hand, and that so we just have the 4 + 2 penalties. What should the judge write on the score sheet? Now only one person actually wrote it correctly, which is that you should write penalties that are applied before the solve starts, before the time. So you don't write 20.05 + 8. You actually, the answer I was looking for was 6 plus 20.05 plus 2 equals 28.05. I think Ryan Jones was the person who wrote that down correctly. Yeah, as I say, this was a little bit inspecific, so I gave a few of you 1 mark for clarifying yourself, and a lot of you got just half a mark for saying, just sort of saying DNF. Yeah, alright, so there were, let's see, 33 people who entered this. I'm just going to add up the average score. The average score was 4.61 out of 10, so that's pretty low. So I feel like I've done my job in making you get stuff wrong. The hardest question seems to be question 4, which only 24% of you got right. Question 3 was only 27%, and the easiest question by far was question 6, which was to do with giving an extra attempt. Pretty much everyone got that right. So the high score that I found was that I gave a 9.5 to Mouse Mikhail. So well done to you. The only thing I docked you half a mark for was the very last question. I can't remember what your answer was, but I guess you didn't sort of clarify yourself or something maybe. But you won anyway, so well done. Second place was Corbinification. I think that's Oleg. So he got a score of 9. He only got question 1 wrong. And then we have Ben 1996123 and Rami Spahi on 8. So well done, guys. Thanks for thinking about this, and I hope you've learned a lot about the regulations and all the little bits and bobs that people might not know. Yeah, I'll see you around. Bye.